name's Patrice Brooks and welcome to Ask the Panel Season 2. We're here in the heart of Brixton to ask the public how they feel about being black in Britain.
My son only goes out with mixed race girls, which can be a bit of a handful.
I think in our culture it's always a work ethic that from birth, like we're always instilled, like we know what it's about, like when it comes down to it.
When you start to feel uncomfortable in places, it kind of limits your potential.
Yeah, we are resilient. I wouldn't say that it ends up being a positive, but it's not a positive that we have to be resilient in the first place.
Welcome to season 2 of The Panel. I am Lovedale, and this season we're talking about being black in Britain. I'm joined by 3 awesome guests, Liu, Tobi and Timi, to talk about being black and professional. So guys, introduce yourselves, tell me about yourselves.
I'm Liu, I'm 28 from Northwest London. I'm a music blogger for Finesse Forever, and I'm also a playlist consultant for Pulse A8, and I'm a youth worker part-time as well.
Hi, my name's Tobi. So I currently work as a software engineer in banking. I'm also an executive on the Young Fabians, one of the oldest political think tanks in the UK.
I'm Timi, I'm 25, I live in South London. I currently work in investment banking and I write for Blackpire.
Great. So guys, I want to talk about being black and professional, right? I want to talk about how we as black people can progress professionally without having to change who we are to seem more professional, right? With that being said, first question I want to throw to you guys is, should black people adjust, adapt or code switch to fit in and be more professional?
I think this is
That's a good question.
It's a good question because obviously when you're going for an interview, everyone mentally prepares themselves and everyone sort of has to almost mold themselves to fit the persona of the firm they want to go to.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when you look at investment banking, for example, so not even software engineering, investment banking, the kinds of people that get hired are the sons and daughters of privileged people. And the reason why firms do that is because the clients that they have are very similar to the people they want to hire. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's a thing where it's almost like a cycle in the sense that the people that are always going to get hired at these big firms are the ones who have been in that space and are naturally like that.
Yeah.
So if you as a sort of black person who grew up in Southeast London, or you grew up in, maybe even if you're white and you grew up in a socially deprived area, you don't speak that language, you don't have that etiquette.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say? You don't speak, you don't have that banter.
I know what you're
So-
I know exactly what you're saying.
So for a lot of people, their natural persona will get them promotions. You know what I'm trying to say? But for certain people, it just won't. I'm not going to be going up to my manager and be like, yo, what you saying, man? Like talking to him like, exactly, like, he's my friend from obviously, when you see sort of black colleagues and they talk to you about their background and you know obviously you clock that they come from Southeast London as well.
Yeah.
You're throwing a bit of cheeky banter when I was watching.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've got to keep it professional, man.
Of course.
At the end of the day, you're there to make the company money and they want you to behave in a certain way to obviously attract more clients or to satisfy client needs. So that's my view on it.
I think it's like, it's a question like it's double-ended because in the climate we're in now, if you want to get into these spaces, you're going to have to kind of play the game. With any kind of role, you have to know who's interviewing you, and it's always going to be, most likely, a white old man. That's like, that's a given, right? And so as you were saying, you can't necessarily go in and be your full self. But I think down the line, what we hope for is that as things become more diverse, you might have a chance of meeting someone who actually looks like you and that you can relate to. But for me, when I joined, when I interviewed, I'd be lying if I said I went in fully as myself, because when I went onto the floor, I was the only one that looked like me. So like naturally, you have to kind of assess what the culture is like and what the people are like, because as you said, when they're promoted, people like to see similarities in people they want to raise in their team. So it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. I feel in my experience it's been back and forward because since I've been working in media and more working with like in music, they kind of want me to be myself, but then there's only so far I can go because it seems like, I think one time someone told me that I was perfect for the job, but because my hair was braids, it made me look too young. So I wouldn't outfit the staff right there. But I'm thinking, so I'm good for the job, but because I have nice hair, it's give or take. If I go to radio and it's for a black show, they want me to be black. But then when I get there, they be like, just tone it down a bit. So it's like, you can't win, but then when you do adapt, and then when you get to a different level in that organization, then you can be somewhat who you are a bit more.
Yeah. I think you all touched on something interesting because obviously, like you said, it's about their clientele. So it depends on your industry and the clientele because a lot of the times the clientele will dictate what kind of person they want to hire.
Like for example, right? Let's look at the music industry. Most rappers can be themselves because their audience.
That's what they want.
You
don't want to see Skepta acting like he's Johnny from down the road.
That's what I'm saying, right? So it's almost as if there are certain industries where you can be more yourself, and there's certain industries where you. I wouldn't even say you're being a completely different person. I'm just being professional Tobi.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like I'm just being professional Tobi. I still have my own professional personality because that's what's even important with these firms. I'm sure Tim can agree that you need to have a personality. You can't just be a robot. You know, there's a yes man to everything. And I work in tech as well, which means that it's not as liberal as the creative space, but it's definitely more liberal than you know, the finance department or people that are working in actual investment banking. So you're sort of free to have your own personality, so to speak. But when you're interacting with clients, you need to sort of portray the firm in a certain way.
Put that face on.
And put that face on. And unfortunately, that isn't necessarily how the majority of people who grew up in socially deprived areas, because I wouldn't even say it's a black thing, right? What is being black? If you're black and you went to Eton or you're exposed to all these you know, big companies from a young age, obviously you're going to speak their language. It's more about where you come from as opposed to what you look like, in my opinion.
But I think obviously there's certain things that come along. Yeah, you're right. I think, but there are certain things that come along with blackness in terms of like culture. So it could be based on the country you've come from, like you said as well, the community you grew up in, that sort of thing. I think I agree in the sense of like there is a thing of being professional and the culture of a company and making sure you're representing the values of the company that you're a part of. I understand that, but I think sometimes we do really shrink ourselves beyond what we need to because we're trying to be. There's this idea we have in our head of what professional is, and I understand the thing of like maybe speaking standard English. That makes sense to me. You need to be able to communicate with everybody, so I'm going to speak standard English. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to avoid using slang that is specific to my particular area or culture, right? But then there's a thing of sometimes where I do, like you mentioned, like things like hair, and I think like that's a major issue of where we shrink and reduce ourselves to seem more professional, and I don't think that's okay.
If he's getting it on radio and media, then you can imagine like if you work back to the more corporate spaces. I've only got my hair out now because we've been in lockdown for 8 months. No one's going to grab me through the Zoom call, right?
I feel like that's the same.
I've seen a lot of people like across lockdown now taking time to grow their hair, or I had cornrows before, or do braids, and that's one of the things I agree. Like in terms of shrinking yourself in the workplace, how easy it is to be yourself if you're black versus other races, I think is harder when you're black, because growing up in the UK, you can't have a box cut, you can't have a night ticket, you can't have a fade, it's got to be a certain level, you can't have cornrows. So when you go into the workplace, you carry that with you. So personally for me, I didn't feel that I could have longer hair without being seen as a drug dealer or a ruffian or security stopping me on the way in. Like that's the truth. And so I think there are certain things that aren't okay to have to shrink yourself for, like hair and appearance and even the way you speak. But then there's certain things as well where I think it's like, there's also professionalism. I think the two things aren't the same.
The other day I was on Google and I searched unprofessional hair because I wanted to see the results I got.
Wow.
And funny enough, you know, having this conversation, what I got was black looking hair. And to me, it didn't look unprofessional. It looked you know, very sort of normal. And let's be real, to be honest, the people that probably suffer most from this is probably our sisters, our black sisters. Just because for them, appearance matters a lot more. Especially when they're being put in front of clients. So I'm not going to lie and say that this kind of hair, if I was to go into work, they would be like, what are you doing? Like, do you want me to go home and cut it off and stuff? I can't lie, you know, this, like, as you know, BLM has become more prominent and as, you know, society has moved on, you know, this kind of hairstyle is probably more accepted. However, you know, the corporate look is, you know, you cut your hair down and you know, if your firm will allow it, you get waves. Like, that's the extent of creativity you can have, you know, you get waves. But like, no, it's true what you said. I had short hair for a long time, but only recently started growing it. Because, not gonna lie, when I cut my hair, I was like, yeah, I look alright, you know, not the best. But then, when I started growing my hair during lockdown, I was like, bruh, fuck. So, I kind of kept it and stuff, but yeah, hopefully I'm not gonna cut it.
Do you know what I think? Yeah, for me, I've worked in a few different spaces, like the creative spaces and more corporate, and hair has been an issue. Now, I understand, for instance, in my creative spaces, sometimes there is a look that we're going for, which is fine. Like, okay, so we want what they might say, like natural looking makeup, hair tied back. I'm okay with those sorts of things because it's quite generic and general, yeah? So even in certain corporate spaces, clean shaven, they might say, that's fine, that's general. But then I know people, for instance, that are in the legal field that have tried to have braids and have plainly told, like, our clients ain't feeling that. You need to take them out. You know, I've had the experience of literally clearly like having big hair at work. This is before I even became management. This is more corporate space. Before I even became management, I remember my supervisors, then I went to straight hair and my supervisor was like, this is much better. This is better. Like, just kind of like, no, this is.
That's the look we're going.
That's it. Do you know what I mean? Which was quite interesting. That is clearly saying something to me. And I feel like while I was in that company, I carried that with me. So as I became management, and I knew I would be having like meetings with really important clients and that sort of thing, I was very particular about always having my hair straight. And that means me having to wear a straight wig. Do you know what I mean? Or for some women, it's relaxing your hair or it's straightening your hair. Why should we have to do that? For what? Because I would say for a white woman, for instance, she doesn't have to do something different to her hair. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like it's whatever her hair is. She can tie it back or she can have it down.
Blue.
Do you understand?
She can put it in curls. She can put it in braids.
Do you understand?
It's less of a problem as a woman.
You see what I mean? But we have to do something extra, like the fact that, for instance, relaxing of hair, which is actually dangerous, is the fact that a lot of black women feel like they have to. That's where I have a problem. It's different if it's your personal preference, but feeling like you have to do it so that you can fit in and be more professional, so that you're not seen in a kind of negative kind of light. I think that's really problematic.
I completely agree with you. But I think the problem is economical, totally economical. And at the end of the day, businesses don't really care about what their clients, what their staff look like. They care about their bottom line. You know, if we put this person in front of a client, will the client react negatively or will they react positively?
I don't think it's just
unfortunately, the clients of most of these big firms are white. Ultimately, do you know what I'm trying to say? The clients of the big banks, the majority of the people are going to be interacting with as a black person is white people. So what we need to try to do is we need to have more black-run businesses. Because if I'm the owner of my business, I'm not going to tell a sister to go change up her hair. And we also need to empower our community so they have the money to be the clients of those big corporations. And we need to also say to these big corporations that they can't not take us on as clients. Because, you know, that's what they also do.
But I don't even want to put my money into the hands of someone that wouldn't even defend me on the outside. Do you see what I mean? So for me as a staff member, if I am a staff member of a company, that if a client has a problem with that, they're going to check that client. Like, if you're going to discriminate, we don't actually want your business.
And that's why I'm saying it's not just the client, because your manager agreed with the client, and that's why I'm saying I think it's both sides harbour the same views, but I think it's easy for the company to be like, the client. Or they like this, but actually, I'm sure she probably agreed, right? Otherwise, she would have said, I think your hair's nice, but it's a shame. And so I think it actually starts with everyone that has those views changing, because if it's the client today, then it's like phone policy tomorrow, and then it's like trends the next day. Like, the excuses are relevant. Either way, I don't think people should have to change, and it's only black people that seem to have to change. That's what I'm saying. What is threatening about the black natural appearance that makes people say you have to be this way? Because it looks more westernized.
They just don't understand it, to be honest. It's just the understanding where you do talk to certain people, especially back in the day, they just didn't understand how black hair was like that, male or female. So it's more like, since they didn't want to understand, they didn't want it even to be allowed in their organizations or even their culture. Because it seems just to now it's been allowed to be, you can be that way. But not too long ago, it was near enough a career-ending sentence for you just to have your natural hair.
So look at what's happening in schools, for example. And it's even interesting that you mentioned law, another sort of cutthroat industry. You see, we have Alexandra Williams, our good sister, who went to Oxford, got 2 prestigious scholarships, and she was mistaken or wrongfully identified as the defendant.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been going on. So what about her in particular, you know, looks controversial? She was wearing, you know, the clothes. She was also wearing
the whole outfit.
And, you know, she had her hair slicked back as well. So it wasn't just the hair.
Yes.
It's also this. It's also the colour of our skin, right? So this goes beyond just hair and stuff. And the other point I was going to make is in schools. I can't remember the details or who it was in particular, but there was a case in Peckham actually, and what happened was a girl was excluded from school, as in told you can't come back because of her hairstyle. And I was even curious, what kind of hair did she have? She had no hair. She got excluded from school because her hair was growing out of a scalp.
Yeah.
Oh,
Her scalp in a
okay,
normal way. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? She didn't do any extreme hairstyles. She didn't cut it off. She just was growing her hair out, and she got excluded from school. Actually, went to court, and she got a settlement. She got a large sum of money. So the court actually recognised the element of discrimination. And I think, you know, schools need to actually think about the rules they apply, because I'm not saying black people should be able to wear whatever they want at schools and stuff like that, because obviously in schools there's, you know, schools are prisons in the UK.
Yeah, of course.
Blah blah blah.
Schools
But
are prisons.
they need to take into account that our hair grows differently.
Yes.
They need to take that into account.
And I think even in the sense, I'm going to move on from this in a minute, but even in the sense of like protective styles, so for black women braiding and that sort of thing, listen, it's cold out in these streets, okay? We need some braids and stuff and protective styles.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
like
no,
our
of
hair
course.
just is different. It responds differently to this
To
climate.
heat, to cold,
Do you know what I mean?
everything. Yes.
So
I wasn't built for this weather.
thank you. And then even in the sense of like knowing that if you have braids, you can keep that for longer and not have to worry about doing your hair every morning. Like, there's so many things that go into it. So I guess it's an ongoing conversation.
No, it is definitely.
But what do you think that companies can do or industries can do to promote more diversity?
Be honest about it. Because it seems during this time they will put a page about diversity or something like that, but then when they actually go to the nitty gritty, either our losses for like a month or a Black History Month, and then it's done the next month, and then you're back to starting it again. There's too many stops and starts. It's either you don't want to do it and be honest about it, or actually be consistent. It's more consistent with the message and action should follow.
I agree with you, and I would also add it's about accountability. At the end of the day, when you do, when you're, you know, a CEO, you're sitting on the executive board of a large organisation, right? There's reports that get given to you. Most companies in the UK don't report on the number of black people they employ and also how much they're paying them. I'm trying to say, a simple report published at the end of the year that showed how many black people you employ, plus how much you're paying these people, would solve a lot of problems, because then you're making that board accountable to a piece of paper. You know what I'm trying to say? And like all things in this world, when you put a piece of paper in front of someone and make them accountable to it, it starts to change the way they operate.
get nervous,
They get nervous, and they have to meet targets, right? But it shouldn't even have to have gotten to that stage. You shouldn't have to get
That's
to
the
the
main
stage
point.
where,
That's
you
the
know,
main
we
point.
need to report about ethnicity and diversity. But I mean, that's the cards we've been dealt. And like my brother said, we can't trust these firms to take responsibility themselves. The government needs to give them a little push. And then look, you need to start, you know, reporting on stuff and releasing this stuff publicly, so we can actually call out the racist firms.
Yeah, and then if we call it out, just don't take it as it's like it's race bait. It's just more, you said something, it hasn't been done properly, we're just making a noise about it.
Yeah.
It's like vice versa when, like, sorry to say, but when you got Karens, when they make a point, right or wrong, the point's out
It's fine, call out Karen, don't apologise. Karen needs to be addressed.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. Don't say Black Lives Matter when you're paying black people, you know, less than a fraction of what other people are making. Don't say Black Lives Matter when you're not hiring black people.
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
It all comes back to that. It all comes back to authenticity. You know.
So accountability and transparency, right? You say you're going to do something, we need to hold you to a deadline, a goal, a percentage, but also like throughout that process, let's see the numbers. How many people are you actually hiring that are diverse? What are you doing within your team communities? What meetings are you having? What boards do you have? And if you're failing, where are you going wrong? Because a lot of these firms will say, we're going to do this, there's no timeline, and then it's like, we want to be diverse. But there's actually no like real push for it. And I think now we're seeing it more. There was that thing where loads of companies were releasing their books and like what percentage of the board was white or black, and it was like there was no one there on the top people that were black, and that made people be like, boycott this company, boycott that company. And with companies, once you start taking away money, it's a shame. That's when they listen. So at this point, we need to see the numbers so we can start pushing people we need to push.
I think what you said is something that I was going to say. I'm looking at top down.
Yes.
It's not about the little man in your company.
Who's
We've got lots
at
of
the
black
top,
people out
yeah.
there. What does your board look like? What do your execs look like? Because if you're a company that is supposed to be, you're trying to reach the masses, let's say, then it should be diverse. It's a no-brainer. It doesn't make sense to have like an all older white male board.
It don't make no sense no more.
If your clientele is diverse.
Yeah, no, you make a very interesting point. I would even say that, you know, someone asked me a very important question. They were like, okay, so how many black people should firms actually employ? And the answer to that question is, I think firms should be representative of the cities they operate in.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
So if you've got 15% of black people in London,
They should,
roughly 50% of your workforce should be black. You know what I'm trying to say? And roughly 50% or black people should be in those top positions, right? We don't want you just to let us in and we're all circling at the bottom, you know, all trying to compete against each other just to get that one promotion.
And that's the other thing, right? Attrition rates, right? As people progress, a lot of these fans, oh, you're going to be diverse, and they go to the black unis, and they go to the events, and they get students in, but no one stays because inside it's horrible, and it's not diverse, and they feel like they're being abused all the time, and it's racist, and so a lot of these fans are, oh yeah, we have a diverse talent pool, but the more important question is, why do we not see any people progressing that are black? And again, it comes back to what you're saying is, if the person at the top of the CEO is white and has these old values, then it's going to feed down to his team and the team below, which is what we're saying about interviews, right? The likelihood of you being interviewed by someone that's black is less likely because most of those people are probably white. But if you start letting people that are diverse reach up the ladder, then the interviewers will be more diverse and they'll get a more diverse talent pool, and then it just grows naturally. So it's got to go the whole way, I think. Otherwise, we're stuck at the bottom.
I want to add another point as well. Like, a lot of people also say, you know, why is diversity important? I'm doing this impersonation. That's a matter of why must firms...
They get riled up.
Surely firms should hire the people that are the most qualified to do the job. But ultimately, there's two things. In fact, three things. The first is that black people in general are more likely to have a degree in the first place. So they're more likely to be overqualified for a job than they actually apply for a position.
And still get rejected.
Number two is the fact that when you actually have a diverse board or diverse organisation, it shows in your performance. The companies that are actually the most diverse do way better than the companies that aren't, because the companies that aren't diverse think in a very sort of narrow way. Whereas the companies that are more diverse think in a very sort of holistic and broad way. That generates more revenue. So that's a benefit to your company. And lastly as well, I think it's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, like, we've had so much.
That's a basic point.
It's just the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to acknowledge the fact that black people have a lot of challenges economically. I'm trying to say, a black person applying to your firm is a testimony in itself.
He's actually trying to be like, I'm trying to get something done.
You know, we've got the evidence that shows that simply your name.
Yes.
When you get an interview.
There's such experiments.
Simply a name. So we know these firms are definitely discriminating, if not at a high level, definitely at a low level. So there's a lot of problems, but I just wanted to make it clear why diversity was important.
Agree.
What industries do you want to see more black people enter into? Are there any industries that you think we're really heavily underrepresented in?
I think we're over.
I mean, in all, but are there any particular you're like, okay, I'm not seeing enough black?
I think we're overrepresented in the music industry.
The arts.
And also sports. What's interesting is, I would say that when you go to a secondary school in South East London, you ask people, black boys, what do you want to be when you grow up? 50% of them will say rappers. 50% will say football player. You know what I'm trying to say? And while, you know, some people might be, you know, musically talented or gifted at playing football, not everyone could be a rapper or football player, ultimately. You know what I'm trying to say? So what is it about a rapper and a football player that's so attractive to these young black boys?
It seems the easiest route.
It's visible, right? It's visible.
It seems the easiest route as well.
No. It's because all the black people that have been accepted
are
all in those films.
That's what you see on TV.
And that's what you see on TV, right?
You know, I'll jump off that way. It was somewhat like that, but in the early stage, even if he was a black and a superstar, that glass ceiling for if he was UK British was disgusting.
Yeah, no, of course,
it was horrible.
About the context of kids now.
No, it's definitely true. But I'll still say that more people that be now artists, managers, or developers, or labels now. More the management side is affected now.
That's what I was going to add to it. And we're overrepresented in the music industry, but even in the football industry, we're overrepresented at the low level. I'm trying to say, where are our black managers? Where are our black football managers? Where are our black label owners? You know what I'm trying to say? It's ridiculous.
In the UK,
why is it that when we dominate an industry, because let's not cap, black people represent, you know, the football. If black people weren't playing for England, England wouldn't even have a chance at the World Cup.
It's the modernised slave trade.
Let alone the music industry. There would be no music scene in the UK if black people didn't rap or do everything they do.
But you know what? It's true.
On top of that, why aren't we owners of our music?
But think about because the music industry we've here in the UK, I think it's a bit deeper. Where if you remember back in the 90s, we had nothing UK-wise through our era kind of represented. It took us years, and every time we tried to get up there, they brought us down. It was the 679 Form for Grime. It's the UK drill banding for here. Even like anything R&B wise, black singers in the UK, they're marginalised. You rarely see any black singers. It's always something that's a glass ceiling. If it's with grime, you can't perform nowhere. If it's drum, you're gonna get banned if you say something. If it's singing, you can't sing because you ain't no white girl like Adele. It's how it is.
I agree, and as much as I want to sort of blame these institutions for giving us exploitative contracts, because that's essentially what happens.
Yeah.
You take a kid from South East London, you're like, we're going to give you a record deal. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But you're taking 60% of his money. Of course he's going to sign it because he's got no alternative. If he doesn't take it, the label has thousands of other black boys who also want to be rappers. So as much as I want to blame those institutions for giving exploitative contracts, there's also a responsibility on ourselves that we need to educate ourselves. And, you know, before we sign these contracts, before we take these labels, is this deal actually good? I was listening to, I don't want to keep talking, but I was listening to a CZ Mills interview with Big Nasty, and
brilliant.
That, he got asked to start a show with Channel 4.
Yeah.
And when Channel 4 came to him, they were like, oh, you know, we'll give you 8K for the whole season. 8K.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? He obviously said, no, can I see the budget for the show?
Yeah.
They go, okay, we'll increase it to 10. And you know, they kept going up. So they got to 30K.
He said budget.
And he was like, you know what, you go chat to my lawyer because you're taking me for an idiot, innit? Cool. So the deal he actually managed to negotiate with them, he has full ownership rights, which has never been done. Channel 4 doesn't give ownership rights to people that are commissioned to do shows. He got that for himself. Do you know what I'm trying to say? He had full creative direction of his own show.
But then I think,
I'm trying to say, which is crazy.
It's Big Nasty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he has a name.
Yeah, he has a brand.
Do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
definitely.
as much as it's important to educate ourselves, me going to Channel 4 and saying like, show me the budget, but then let me like show you the door. It also comes back to like the industry needs to stop being evil.
It's like
It's twofold. Of course, I'm not saying fault. It's just our fault as well.
because it's not just him. We saw the same thing with Monique and the comedian and Netflix. It was the same thing. And again, she has got. She's been around for a while and she's got a lot. She might not be able to.
No, let's go neat.
Because she might not be able to claim the same as maybe some of the other comedians, of course, but still, what she was being offered was actually very poor, considering a lot of her, if you want to say, what would I say? A lot of her achievements and stuff. What I'm saying, it's not even just here. It's like a world.
It's everywhere.
It's a global issue when it comes to being black.
It's almost as if them man see us man as a cheaper option.
It's the globalization.
But at the same time,
it's the same. Using black bodies to profit.
And again,
at the lowest rates possible.
Right. But if you're thinking about, you mentioned like the kid from South London or wherever they're from, because we were talking about this earlier. We've got black people in all the different parts of London. But what is your proximity? Who are you around? Not everyone's going to have somebody that can tell them this is not a good contract, or this is what you should ask for, or this is what you need to think about. Not everyone has access to those people. So the Big Nasty, even he had a brand already, but also he's got proximity to other people where he can be like, yo, does this sound right? What am I supposed to be looking at?
You're only British if you can run. These guys who I'm not sure if you
run, rap,
saw
or kick a ball.
about I can't remember their names, but two sort of they're part of Team GB and they got stopped and searched.
Oh yes,
Everyone that was black got stopped.
That was quite controversial, but and what's interesting, right, is that kind of story isn't unique. But the only reason why the media made it a big deal is people actually gave, I don't want to swear, but people actually cared was because they were activists.
Yeah. And it's
That's a good point, actually. Because I didn't think of it like that. Because I remember when it happened, everyone was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that X got stopped." But actually, it's like it wasn't about the celebrity being stopped. We all go through it, right? My friend was stopped the other day driving an old van. Like, it doesn't matter what car you drive. When you're driving,
even walking, if you can.
Even going into boots, right? Like,
literally,
you can be stopped for anything. And so, again, as you said at the start, it's just about the skin color. As basically they see it and it's a threat. And so it's tough to navigate that. But
speaking of thinking about industries or spaces that are kind of underrepresented. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't answer the question, did we?
No. Well, we kind of we talked about it. I guess. So, how or should black people represent their race in spaces where they are the only black in the room? Should they have to kind of think about representing their race, or how should they? You know, what do you think?
I think
this is a heavy one.
It's heavy because there's responsibility, but there's also it's not necessarily their responsibility, right? And so I feel at times responsible to like be my authentic self in the workplace or in other spaces where I'm friends with people that aren't necessarily the same as me, to show them the diversity that like not all black people are athletes or musicians. You can work in investment banking or can dress in different ways or have different talents, right? But also then if you're the only person in that space, it feels like you have to like carry the weight of everyone else and represent them, which is also sometimes people don't want to do it, and I say that's fair. Sometimes it's a lot to take on.
Yeah.
Also, the risk with that is that if you're the only black person, then people assume that all people are like you. I have a black friend that works with me, and they think they know everyone. And so either way, like it's tough. I think people should do as much as they feel they can without harming their mental health. Because mental health, I think, is in all of these things, especially in work.
Yeah.
When you're going in 50 hours plus a week, like having to feel like you're having to represent everyone and be a certain way all the time is very, very draining.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, man.
Very
And
true.
I would just say to these firms, if you think one black person is a reflection of the entire race, then there's something wrong with you, not the person. I don't think anyone should have that responsibility on them. But what I will say is, in America, this discussion has probably happened, before us, just because the narrative in America about black people has been so negative for years. They had segregation and they had, all of these things happening to them, which made them, lower in terms of like the socio-economical status of the community there. Whereas in Britain, it's slightly different because we came over in the 80s and 90s where racism was kind of, well, it's still a thing, but it wasn't as bad as, in the 60s in America. And what's interesting is that the narrative that the right-wing media in this country run is completely false. Like in America, at least it's sort of true that in terms of attainment, black people aren't doing as well. But in the UK, black people are smashing records. The 4 youngest people ever to take GCSEs are all black. There's a guy called, I can't remember his name. I think his name is Ariyo Wilfred. He has a higher IQ than Einstein and Stephen Hawking. Yet we don't know his name, and he's black. You know what I'm trying to say? Now, when you look at, pick up any newspaper, right-wing newspaper, what is the first headline you see? Black on black crime. You have a black, violence problem in the UK.
This and that, this and that.
It's almost as if they want us to be America. The problems that black people face here is the false narrative that is being perpetuated. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because a lot of us are doing very well academically. We're all very bright individuals, all of us in this room.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's letting us down is the false narrative the media is pushing. It's not even ourselves. We are doing all the right things. Me being myself, me being a normal person in the workplace, just brushing up on the slang and stuff, it's fine. People see me as a respectable gentleman. I'm trying to say. Like, I have good manners. I say please and thank you. I don't swear a lot. So there's actually nothing wrong with my intrinsic blackness. The narrative is the problem, and the narrative is the lie.
And actually, back to a question though, I think actually in a workspace where say you're the only black person and everyone's white, the onus should actually be on the white people to educate themselves and to try and get to know the outlier, the one that's isolated. Because I think when people actually take the time to watch the news and read different sources and not just see the narrative we see, and actually pay attention to the stories your friends share and engage in those things, then come to work and say, oh, I saw this thing you shared, what's happening? That conversation, I think, is actually more progressive and helps start the wider conversation. Whereas I feel like I don't want to be the guy that walks into work and then, because I had this at school, the angry black kid who always wants to say that everyone's being killed and racist and blah, 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 blah. So I think when you start a new job, you don't want to come in and be the one that's like going on about all these stuff, because then they're like, oh, she's always talking about race, she's always talking about race, she's angry. It's not that racist, oh, I'm a racist, you kind of thing. So I think it's important for us to bring ourselves in and share our stories, but also I think people who aren't in these communities need to actually, as you said, just do the right thing and care about what is happening in this country where opportunities aren't being given equally to everyone. It's about caring about humanity
and I think, obviously me reflecting and thinking about myself in workspaces or even in education spaces, I have felt pressure to represent all black women. And there's the thing of the angry black woman. Like if I'm mad about something, anybody else could have been mad about it. A white woman, Karen could have been mad about it. And it's a righteous anger. It makes sense for her to be angry. But then me being angry, wow, what's wrong with her? She's got such an attitude, the black girl attitude, the anger.
Yeah, no, I also think black women have a lot of things to be angry about. I mean,
we do. If we chose to be angry, we definitely have a lot of. It's well within our right.
If you brought a list,
no, it's true. But the funny thing is, like, we have all of our issues. That there's some inherent anger in there about black issues, but there's also just basic anger about basic normal everyday things as well. And I feel like where white people are entitled to have that anger, black women may not be, because you are then labelled as the angry black woman, aggressive, that stuff. Right. So even if exactly, and that's the funny thing. It's always the same words that they label. So if you're thinking about even, let's say, in your board meeting. If you're passionate about something, it's seen as being aggressive as opposed to being
They always
passionate.
They swap it.
Do you understand?
Passion for aggression.
Right, which says all these negative connotations. So then for me, I've even had, like in education spaces where there have been around Caucasians that were not born and raised in London. They're from other cities. So I am the first black female that they've met.
That was me at uni.
Yeah.
Right,
You're my first black friends.
Right. So even then it's
Great
like,
to do this.
I want to show them that black people are nice and normal.
Yeah,
You know, like I feel, I don't know what it is. It's like no one has said I have to be that, but it's just feel this certain type of pressure. And like you said earlier, we shouldn't have to. The onus should be on the other to actually do the
sometimes
work.
when you do, they expect that and they kind of take advantage. They know that you will be a bit more kinder when sometimes you got time to shut them out.
I do think so.
I think ultimately though, you know, if you're going into work, everyone's going to want to show a big, you know, good impression.
Of course.
No one goes into work thinking, you know, I've got to, you know, show them that black people are like maybe some people do, but ultimately I want to prove that I deserve to be at the firm and I deserve these promotions.
No,
That's what I'm working hard.
But this is the point though, right? I can't remember the number, but I think it's like 2.5. Black people on average will have to work 2.5 times harder than their white counterpart to get the same promotion, to get the same.
Yeah.
So even though we all go in wanting to do a good job, other people can kind of try and still progress. But for us, it's always you have to always be doing more, and most people are doing more than they need to for their pay grade to maintain the same job.
I think that in any space, do the best you can do. I really believe that, like, not to let all the politics and all that sort of thing stop you from trying to achieve what you want to achieve, trying to reach your goals and that sort of thing, and trying to get your money. Because for some people, it's not even about that they're passionate about that area. They just you just want to get paid. You got things, you know what I mean. You want to live a certain life. So holding on to that kind of whatever that goal is for you.
That determination to be, I'm not here for you. I'm just here for that check.
So just holding on to that rather than the other stuff. So with recent events, especially this year, I would say, like with Black Lives Matter and that sort of thing, how do you feel like it has changed the way that you work or how you operate as a black person in the workspace? Has it changed the way you work?
At this point, I'm just very unapologetic. I kind of was toying between the two of like, I'm not going to say anything, and then do I say something and I say some things. And I kind of just realised, like, you know what, the worst case scenario, they're going to fire me, right? Like, at this point, people are dying, people are committing suicide, and people are having breakdowns. Like, it's a lot to carry, and I think not sharing that pain and having to hide it and come into work and be like that for how many hours a week is damaging. I'm not saying in the sense I'm walking around just like screaming and causing trouble, but I think I'm having conversations with people that I feel need to be had. So if there's a talk on the Black Network, I'll share it to my whole team and say, hey guys, this is happening, I think you guys should join. We can discuss after. I'm setting up calls with people, I'm talking to my managers and partners about stuff, just because I think, I'm not saying that the guilt is justified or the awkwardness or the white fragility, whatever, but I understand that it's hard for them as well to like start the conversation. And so if I am comfortable enough to do it, then I'm happy to try and start having those conversations in the hope that people will actually go away and read the article. If that just snowballs and leads to someone else having a conversation, then at least that might spread to people understanding. So I think that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
The movement in general it's been happening before we even gave it a name. So it's like, for me personally and my upbringing with a Rastafarian granddad, I've been hearing this for decades. So it's more for me to say, I ain't really seen much to change my mind where it's like things are gonna get better. It's more like me staying focused and knowing who I am in general. And that ain't gonna change if Black Lives Matter UK or whatever is still here or not. Because if it's gone by next year, it's still me saying to myself, Black Lives Matter. Because you got people saying, yeah, we're gonna do this and that. But then when that energy and the drive is gone, it's back to the same thing. So it's giving some people fake hope who kind of got this new energy from the movement. But if it wasn't like that before, then when that energy is gone, you might just dwindle with it. And that would be more dangerous than not even doing it in the first place.
I have a different perspective. I'm an optimist. Like, I believe that, I believe in the best of humanity. I really do. And I think that this in particular would not have happened 20 years ago. If the same killing, wrongful killing of a black man was, you know, broadcasted to the world, this reaction we got from not just governments but also all these big corporations would not have happened. Which to me is it gives me hope. It gives me a lot of hope, because when I think to the kind of challenges, you know, my parents faced and my grandparents faced, you know, not being allowed into pubs, being called the N-word openly in public, and I almost appreciate what they've given us, you know, my inheritance, that I can actually apply for a job and potentially get an interview, albeit there's still discrimination in that screening process. But, you know, the progress we've made in the last sort of 30 to 20 years cannot be overlooked. And I think, you know, it's almost people who overlook the progress we've made. It's almost an insult to the people who came before us, because they did so much to give us the opportunities that we had. But in the same breath, we also need to inherit what they've given us to take it further. That's why I also agree with you, brother, in the sense that we need to do more and we need to keep up the pressure. If anything, we need to hold these firms to account to what they've now committed to, because they've committed to all sorts.
They said some big statements.
But I would just say generally, I'm optimistic. I really do feel like we will see.
I feel like I'm in the middle of the two of you. Like, I agree with what you're saying, that we've made progress and it can't be overlooked. But at the same time, someone threw a beer can at me on the way here, and then I was called the N-word in Wales in a pub when I was taken out by the security, and then I was called the N-word on the train the other day. Like, this stuff is still happening, right? And so like it's not like, I want to be careful with how we frame stuff, because I know some people will watch this and be like, you see, it's fine, right? And it's it isn't as bad, and I 100% agree, and we've come a long way, but at the same time, like, people are still getting beaten up on nights out. People are still not getting let into pubs and bars and restaurants and getting taken out by security. Like, it's insidious, but I think it's less overt. But I think, especially given last year when we had Brexit voted for, racial hate crimes went up percentages, right? So like, I think we've done well because I think there was progression, but with Donald Trump and Boris Johnson now, it's almost liberating to be in that camp, because it's so brazen and in front of you that people are feeling fine doing that kind of stuff and coming out and being racist. So I don't think we're fully done at all. And I hope it leads to change, but BLM was happening months ago, and now I'm seeing less people talk about it, and people are less engaged in what's happening in Nigeria and Congo. And so I think we have to, as you said, keep applying the pressure, because people naturally will care when they need to care. We were in lockdown, we were at home, it was all over the news, people responded because they had to. But if we weren't in lockdown, because we have to remember, like, black people have been broadcasted being killed for years. Since Twitter's been on, I've seen countless videos of people being shot. And the reaction wasn't there, but it came this time, I guess, because people were forced to look at it. But I question, if we weren't in lockdown, what would have happened? That's what I think.
Yeah, I guess because we were still. But I think that was the powerful thing about it happening in lockdown, where we were all still, we were forced to look at certain things. And for a lot of us, I think we were forced to look at ourselves. And I think even me as a black female, where I've been concerned about myself, my family, and even blackness as a whole, I think it was heightened by what I saw in that lockdown, because it forced me to look at it. So there was a new kind of, I wouldn't just say a passion, yes, but just there was a different pain. I think there was a different pain when you see something, and that has, for me, definitely changed the way I work, in the sense of, like, for me specifically, I guess, in the arts, me being that representation and me having a bit different understanding of how important it is, that representation, and how I use that representation to amplify other black voices or pull up other black people. So I think it's just increased that awareness for me, I think. And I think it's a positive thing. I think it's a positive thing. Yeah. This has been really great discussion, guys. I really loved having you on. So just to close this out, I want to know, we've got 3 things you just want to leave with black professionals that will watch this.
Just keep your head down, like I said, work hard, you know, the grind don't stop. If you want to get them coins, you want to get that promotion, just work hard, focus on your work. Don't engage in office politics. Office politics wasn't built for you. just don't have time for it, man. Do the work you're given and show that you're the best person in your team and you deserve the promotional beat. You'll probably have to work twice as hard, but hey.
I'd say be yourself, look after yourself, and don't beat yourself up. So one, like, as in, be yourself to the extent you feel you can and you're comfortable in that space to do that. No pressure either way, right? If you don't want to do it today, don't do it today. And I think, you know, look after yourself in terms of, like, your mental. If you're not feeling it and work is getting to you and, like, the industry doesn't feel right or the company doesn't, don't kill yourself for this company, because they will, if you die, they will replace you the next day, right? So if it's too much, quit the job, go somewhere else, speak to your family about it, try and leverage your contacts. Don't die for a company that wouldn't die for you. And don't beat yourself up in the sense that, like, it's structural, it's institutional racism. Like, you can't fight it in one day just on your own. It's going to take years. We have a long way to go. We've come a far way, but being in that space, don't put the pressure on yourself to, like, be the hero on your own, because sometimes it isn't going to happen. And, like, as we said, it's the CEO's got to come down to the levels below. So fight your fight as much as you can, but it's not your fault, I think.
Yeah. I would say don't beat yourself up if you can't do everything. Just because you are, but doesn't mean that you have to always work like 200%. Sometimes you can just be comfortable and work as much as you can do. Also, be comfortable with who you are. Sometimes you feel like you have to be someone else, or you feel like you're not even comfortable as a black person, but that's fine. It takes time. So for me, it took me time to be like, yeah, I'm comfortable being a black person out in this country, where before it was more like, freaking hate it. But over time, you become comfortable in yourself. And the third one is kind of just don't give up. Just don't give up. Because if you give, it's easier, it's harder to give up than to not, I would say.
My 3 things would be, don't shrink. You're black. It is what it is. Do you know what I mean?
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I would say protect your ideas.
Yes.
Protect your ideas. And last thing I'd say, protect your peace. Similar thing of your mental, protect your peace. That's what's important. Like you said, these companies, if you're gone tomorrow, they'll forget about you after a while. They replace you. So protect your peace. And yeah, that's what will be my 3 tips. Where can people find you? I'm sure people are really interested to find you, whether it's social media, whatever else you had. We'll start down here.
Twitter is TJ Ariyo, so TJARIYO. Instagram is Timi Ariyo, and then that's it. YouTube is TJ Ariyo as well.
It's tobes.dada on Instagram, and it's Tobi Talks. But if you do Tobi Dada, you'll probably find me as well on Twitter.
On Twitter is @RSBless. On Instagram, it is @RSBless1. Use my hashtag #MrCrudButProfessional. You'll find me there.
Thank you so much for being here today. Like, I feel like that conversation was very useful. It was very enlightening. So thank you, guys.
No problem. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Ask the Panel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.